Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's guest is Vicky. She is a nurse and cosplayer who works, lives, and does all her fandom, at least for now, in Australia. She lives in Brisbane, which is the capital city of Queensland on the East Coast. She's been cosplaying for 4 years, but she's been into fandoms for at least 10 years now. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, Vicky.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much for working with me on time zones, on being able to get this done.
Well, yeah, it's like 10:30 here in Australia on a Monday morning, and it's 8:30 p.m. in the US?
8:30 p.m. Sunday.
Feels like I've gone back in time.
Or you've gone forward in time, and as you told me, the weather's going to be very good tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Not too cold today.
That's a good thing for us, especially here in Florida. Although I would prefer the cold because I just can't stand the heat.
Yeah, we can all agree on that. Summer here in Australia is pretty killer.
Yeah, and as we were talking about before we started recording, if it's not the weather that will kill you, it's the animals, right?
Yeah, you got to watch out for those drop bears.
The what?
Drop bears.
What are drop bears?
I'll leave you guys to Google that one.
Okay, everyone, we've got to Google that. I'm going to have to Google it after I get off because I've got to find out what a drop bear is.
It's oh, it's been a joke. It's been a running joke here in Australia since a TV ad started a couple of years back for an alcohol that was sold here in Australia. So it's quite an entertaining thing if you look up drop bears.
Oh, I'm going to have to look it up. I'll even post it on the Facebook page once I find it. So, Vicky, how would you describe fandom?
So I describe it as generally for my kind of myself personally, I describe it as being from a particular group of people who loves a TV show, a movie, a comic, anything that's to do with pop culture, even in real life situations such as our football teams, because I do like my football and my Olympics. So I consider it as someone who loves something enough that they can tell you about it and be able to express that fandom to you in a way that they feel comfortable to do it. So for me, I can go and have a chat with someone about, say, sports. I could go and say, hey, look, did you watch the football the other night? It was absolutely a blast. My team actually won tonight and blah, 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 blah. I mentioned all the players and who won. Whereas if I go into a popular culture kind of setting, I could talk all about, so my Final Fantasy, I love playing Final Fantasy 10 and 10 too. I have played Final Fantasy 12. I've played Final Fantasy 13. My boyfriend's played Final Fantasy 8 and 7, which he can tell me more about than I can talk about myself. So it's all about expressing yourself and a fandom or a group of people about something else. So a show in particular. So that's what my understanding of fandom is.
Absolutely. I had a guest on earlier, and we all like whenever I talk to people, it's mostly falls into the pop culture realm, but I've had people that talked about like cooking and cooking shows that are real popular over here in America. And one of my guests said that she was into Judge Judy, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with,
Yeah.
but it's a
Yeah.
judge that is on TV during the daytime handling like little court cases, but
Yeah.
she was like, I can talk all day about Judge Judy.
Yeah, we get Judge Judy over here too. When I was doing my aged care work as a nurse in rural and isolated practice nursing, there was an aged care component, and a lot of the oldies in the aged care section loved having Judge Judy on during the day. So I'm quite well acquainted with Judge Judy.
Wow, that is awesome that she gets her reach all the way to Australia.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty interesting.
so you said you're definitely into Final Fantasy.
Yes.
Are you particularly just a huge gamer, or are you branching out from video games to other fandoms?
So primarily when I first started fandom, I was probably about 6 or 7. So Pokemon was a big thing. It started in 1996. So I would have been about 4 years of age at the time. So by the time I got to about 8 to 10, that's morning cartoons age group here in Australia before you go to school. So Pokemon was quite a big thing. And so was Digimon and Dragon Ball Z. So I initially started with these broad spectrum animes that came over from the United States, being voice dubbed from Japan. So I used to start watching those. Then, as I got older into high school, my brother happened to win a PlayStation 2. We had the original PlayStation 1 where we played Crash Bandicoot and Crash Team Racing, so the original Crash Bandicoot games there. But we won a PlayStation 2 in a competition, and we got some Final Fantasy games. And my brother wasn't into those. He was more into first-person shooters, and I started playing Final Fantasy X, and my addiction to fandom started particularly there instead of back in those animes. As fun as they were, you're still too young not to understand what was going on. But being about 13, 14, 15 at the time playing Final Fantasy, it was a fantastic game. It opened up a new world, different characters, an evolved storyline, complex developments in characters. So we watch the evil villain develop from a, hey, I think he's quite a nice guy, to, ooh, he's a bit of a creep. And it kind of, and eventually by the time you get to the end of the game, you're sick of seeing the main villain. You're like, come on, can I just defeat the bad guy, get my happy ending? And then when the happy ending comes and you go, wow, that is actually not a happy ending to what you would
Right.
expect. So so we watched the developments. That my fandom was that game, and trying to figure out how the story would intertwine and why everyone was so happy for the main female character, Yuna, and why they weren't happy at the same time, like they were hiding something. So I was trying to figure that out. And I started Googling things and looking up the character. I didn't look into the storyline. I started looking into the character myself. And then I found, I believe it was Totally Toasty. She's one of the, there's two girls, Teeny and, I think it's Teeny and Tiny. I'm not 100% sure. But these two girls did a Final Fantasy shoot with Riku and Yuna, so two of the main female characters. And I found Teeny as Yuna while I was Googling, and I was like, wow, you can actually dress up as video game characters. That's how I got into costuming and divulged from gaming into costuming. And then once I found that, you kind of find fan fiction as well. So you go into reading it. So, it kind of branches out and you find different things. And a girlfriend of mine's a really good artist, and she was at the time when we were playing Final Fantasy X, she was drawing a lot of Final Fantasy characters. So she went into art on that side.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know I was a kid growing up way back in the day, so I actually started with the original Final Fantasy on the Nintendo.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy X is probably my second favorite of the entire series that I've played anyway. I kind of stopped at 12, or was it 11? 11 was the online one. 12, I stopped at 12.
Yeah.
I didn't really like it too much as far as the controls go.
Yeah.
But I loved 10, and I love Riku. I love Yuna. Like, those two are two of my favorite characters in the series.
Yeah, on the topic of 12, actually, they're bringing out a new version of 12 where they'll be modifying the licenses a bit on it. So, like, it'll be more of a sphere grid kind of setting on it. Because I liked Evilise. I love the story of how the characters work in Evilise. And we find Ashalia as Amalia, she starts off as, and then she goes into being Ashalia. And I did enjoy how this all worked. And it was quite an interesting story, but I just wasn't used to the new gameplay in particular. So it wasn't a stop turn based. It was more of a continuous attack. You had to build up this, if I remember correctly, the attack bar, and then you could attack, and it had a few second delay on it. So it was different, and the more you changed your licenses, the more complex the characters' attacks were. But I just found it too quick moving, so I found it very complex trying to get into the different attacks and starting to use my mana and using magic. So that was the only thing I didn't like about the attack, and it was called an active dimension battle system. So I didn't particularly like the active dimension battle. which followed into Final Fantasy 13, which I actually did not finish because I just hated the story that much.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, if I remember, I used to always want graphics when I was a little kid. Like, I need the game to have good graphics, and now it's totally, I need the game to have a great story and great characters. Regardless of if the graphics are good or not, I need a good story with characters that are going to be that I'm going to fall in love with.
Mm.
And that's what happened with Final Fantasy X, to the point where when I moved to Japan, I made sure I brought a PlayStation 2 and Final Fantasy X with me so I could actually play it and just really have time to sit down and get into it, even though it had been out for a few years by that point.
Yeah, it's a good game. I got it for my birthday ages ago. I just haven't managed it. I'm waiting for the HD remaster with the new battle system to come into PlayStation 4 before I'll play it again, because PlayStation 2 at the time was pretty limited with what they could do with it. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes. But overall, the Final Fantasy fandom is huge.
Do you find when you're in the Final Fantasy fandom, is it like, how is it as far as online goes? Are you more of an online fandom person with Final Fantasy, or is it more through your costuming as the characters that you are more interacting with the fandom?
So there's not really much of an online component to Final Fantasy unless you're playing like your PC games. And as you said, Final Fantasy 11 being a being a what's it as being an online game, so you're actually seeing that there. But I didn't see any I didn't see much of the online perspective for it, which was a shame. But I find that I'm more of a Final Fantasy person with the cosplay community as well. So I can talk to someone if I'm in my costume. Um, if I'm in my costume, I can just be like, "Oh, yep, I know about this character. I can tell you all about this character if you want me to tell me about this character." And I've had my knowledge tested. We have people here in Australia who like to test people's knowledges to actually see if they're a fan. So I've
Right.
had one of these people come up to me and test my knowledge on a character, and they actually learned something from me while I was talking to them about this character. They went, "Oh, you actually know more about this character than I do. Whoopsies. I've got to go now." So I've had that happen to me a couple times at a convention, and while I was actually out grocery shopping wearing a fandom T-shirt. So yeah.
Yeah, it's always disappointing to hear when, especially, it seems to fall more on girls and women that are into, like, especially video games or comics or whatnot. The whole fandom type community is that they get tested and quizzed to make sure, oh, are you a real, like, quote unquote gamer girl or person that's into this series or this comic book. And it's almost like, why do you need to do that? Because you should be happy that they're into it to begin with.
Yeah, I find it's always the comic book side of things that I'm getting tested on instead of the gaming side of things. So it's more of that than I'm finding. But otherwise, the overall fandom itself, when you're out at conventions, when people finally see like, oh my God, there's someone dressed as Final Fantasy X2 Gunner Yuna right now at this convention, and it goes around the convention, and someone's like, oh my God, you're that girl who's dressed as Gunner Yuna. Can I get a photo? I've heard that there was a Gunner Yuna hanging around the convention. I'm like, oh, cool, not a problem. Yeah, sure. And they go, so they're just excited in general to see a Gunner Yuna and just to be able to go, like, this is my favorite character in the game because of these 5 reasons, but also because back in Final Fantasy X, these 6 reasons, I didn't like how they did the X2 game, but I still liked how they developed Yuna's character and la-di-da-di-da, and you get your ending at the end. And I'm like, yeah, that's an exact reason why I played Final Fantasy X-2 to begin with. So we go through that entire stage right there. So it's a fantastic thing to be able to do that with another fan and freak out over a character that we both like in common.
Absolutely. Now, is Yuna your favorite character from Final Fantasy X?
Yes, I would say Yuna is probably my favorite character from Final Fantasy X. I have done in the costuming community, I have done two of her costumes now. And she was probably one of the main reasons I actually got into costuming in the first place. So I probably would say she's my favorite character in the Final Fantasy community, apart from Final Fantasy XII's Princess Ashalia.
Okay. I know that I've talked to a few people because Final Fantasy X is just one of those games that I love, I grew up on, and a lot of other people love. And I always say that Yuna has one of the most iconic outfits of the Final Fantasy series. Like, from, I think the only one that, or the only two people that could rival Yuna as far as costumes go is like Aerith and Tifa from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
But Yuna's costume is just so beautiful and different. Like, it's just so different, but it's got just such that iconic look, especially since it's been out for 10, 15 years now. I'm not
Yeah.
too sure, but it's been out for so long that like everyone knows it.
Yeah, Yuna's. When I was reading up on Yuna quite a lot, and especially after I finished the game, I went onto Wikipedia and I double checked the Final Fantasy Wikipedias. I'm reading what the designer for Yuna did. He was like, I wanted to design something that reminded us of a Japanese kimono or a yukata, and he wanted to embody that into Yuna's costume. So he kind of deconstructed a kimono for Una. So you've got your beautiful long sleeves and the cross over the front of the bodice, and you've got the beautiful bow and the long skirt. So you've got all of that in her design. So that's one of the most classical things in her design that I loved about Una. And a lot of people agree that they really liked that about Una in Final Fantasy X. And when you watch the fandom evolve, they go from 10 to 10-2 and they go, wow, Una changed a lot in
Hmm.
that respect. Like after the ending of Final Fantasy X, if people haven't played Final Fantasy X, I'm not going to destroy the ending. So after the Final Fantasy X ending, and when she went into X2, Riku, there's a little story that is on the international PlayStation 4 international version. You can watch the little intermittent video between X2 and X, and it gives you an idea of what happened to Yuna in just before Final Fantasy X. Riku had a big part to say in that, and she was like, but first, we need new outfits. So Riku was a big undertaker in that entire change in Yuna as well.
Right. And I like that dynamic between Yuna and Riku because they're just like, Riku is always by Yuna's side looking out for her. And I loved when they announced Final Fantasy X 2, which was the first really sequel to any Final Fantasy game, that they were including Riku right off the bat. And that
Mm.
was really nice to see.
Yeah, it was pretty wicked.
Now, we were talking before we started recording, and you told me that there are two fandoms here in America. One's still going on, one has ended a long time ago, that you're just getting into, which is really fascinating for me, and that is Supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes, I've just gotten into those.
How
Um,
did you? Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
it was kind of awkward. So when I first started, we had what you guys call pay TV. Well, what we call pay TV is Austar or Foxtel. So that's something we have free view television here in Australia. So we don't have to pay for our television at all. But if we want to watch, get certain channels that have certain shows, like sci-fi shows in particular, we have to use what we call Austar or Foxtel, and that costs about what 70, $80 a month. So I didn't ever get to watch those awesome TV shows that were on pay. So when we did have pay, I did manage to watch a couple episodes of Buffy, and I was a bit intrigued by it. So I just recently got my hands on a couple copies of Buffy, and I've started watching Buffy. So it's been a long time. I know it's been running in the United States. I knew it ran ages ago. Um, I know it was before, during the time, I remember when Scooby Doo, the movie came out. So
Hmm.
I know Sarah Michelle Gellar was Daphne in that movie. So I believe Buffy was playing a couple seasons or 5 or 6 seasons before that. So it's quite an old TV series, but from what I understand, it's probably one of the most iconic TV series that still that is talked about because of the characters and what it set out to do. If I'm
Now,
correct.
you are correct, and it ran for 7 seasons before it's transitioned now into a comic book
Hmm.
that's done another 3 seasons, or 3 seasons of comics that they've published. But it is one of those fandoms where Buffy was a real big entry point for a lot of people, where it got them into it and then got them into a lot of other shows. Some from like Joss Whedon,
Mm.
particularly like Angel or Firefly, or even transitioning to different shows like Vampire Diaries or like Teen Wolf. It really set the stage for a lot of the supernatural shows that are out there now that are running.
Hmm.
So, what do you think about Buffy so far?
So I've gotten myself about seven episodes into the first season currently, and so far I'm enjoying it. I'm wanting to find out, a little bit more about Buffy, what she's done to end up getting into where she is currently. So I want to see how she's ended up in her small town. Um, I know in the movie there was a bit of a backstory that the vampires came and they attacked at the school and destroyed the gym, and there was a bit of trouble there, and everyone was getting detention slips from the detention guy. That was pretty cool. So I wanted to see how the series progresses. So far I'm enjoying it. I've already been introduced to Angel. I did watch a bit of Angel as well when I was on pay TV, so I know who Angel is before watching Buffy anyway. So actually, the actor for Angel was probably one of my favorite actors anyway, because I went on to watch Bones because of him. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, because he's one of the leads in Bones, obviously. But I found watching Buffy and watching these characters and going, so that's where you've come from, and this is how this starts, and you're all dark and mysterious to begin with, and you're a bit annoying, but I'm going to see if I like you or not. And there's a couple characters like that at the moment that are a bit like, I remember you later in the series from seeing a few episodes on pay, and I'm going, yeah, I liked you, but at the moment I don't particularly like you because you're annoying. But obviously, I'll grow. The characters will grow and progress, and I'll start to like them. Obviously,
Hmm.
but it's
Who's
interesting.
your favorite right now?
Obviously, Buffy, but Willow's pretty wicked. She kind of embodies what I was like in high school. Quiet. Um, all the popular kids were mean and picked on me. I tried to be who I was, and it didn't matter. I could wear what I wanted, where I was. I didn't care. And yeah, I kind of feel like that's Willow pretty much embodies what I was like in high school, but only Willow's very pretty versus
Gotcha.
the high school me.
The high school you versus what you are now,
Yeah.
which is I mean, the cosplays that you do speak for themselves as far as how great you get to portray different characters.
Mm. It's amazing how much someone changes through high school into the real life when once you get past growing up and going through all of that. It's amazing what changes. It's pretty cool. Um,
Absolutely.
Welcome to what happens after high school. But yeah, I'm enjoying where Buffy's going at the moment. Even though I'm only in the first season, I can see that there's going to be a lot of things happen, and that obviously we've had a lot of vampires in the first 2 episodes, which was a bit like, wow, there's a
Hmm.
huge lot of vampires, and obviously we've already been introduced to the main bad guy, so obviously there's going to be something happen in this first season to do with this main vampire who's wanting to come back. So that'll be interesting to see where it goes. And speaking to other people who have already watched Buffy, and there's been a couple of my girlfriends who are like, oh my God, you've finally gotten into it. That's awesome. There's a lot that's going to happen according to them. And they're like, yep, so you're going to have a lot happen in the first season, and you'll see where the story progresses, and you'll love it, but then you'll also hate it, and then you'll love it again. So I'm like, oh, okay. I'll just, give it a go, see where I head.
Absolutely. When I first met my wife, she had never watched it, and so we sat down and started going through it slowly. And I told her the first season would be the hardest season to really get through,
Mm,
because it sets up a lot of the characters and the story that's going to lead you through the next several seasons. But sometimes it's just like they haven't really gotten the look of the characters down yet, or the graphics for the vampires. But once that first season finishes and you kind of go into season 2, everything just starts getting so much better. But it builds on that first season, and there's stuff that happens in the third season, the fourth season, the fifth season that calls back to the first season.
Yeah.
And you're like, I remember that. And that's one of the great things about Buffy, is just everything's connected. You see the characters grow and learn from the experiences that happened even during that first season.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm excited about. And it's funny how the community here in Australia works. So at the moment, the community is all about Suicide Squad and DC characters because of all the new movie releases. But also,
Mm-hmm.
some of the cosplayers are going back and going, right, so what did I love in my childhood that I can costume at the moment? Because I'm sick of seeing League of Legends, I'm sick of seeing Suicide Squad. So they're going back to their originals. So one of the girls, known as the Lazy Cosplayer, she's currently doing a Buffy costume at the moment, and she's hitting it right on the mark because she's going back to the classic Buffy with a tank top and a pair of jeans and just a steak. And I go straight away, even I know that's Buffy, and I go, right, Buffy. So she's going back and doing classic things like that, and some of the classic Tomb Raiders as well. So she's hitting that right on the mark. So we're seeing something different here in the community. Don't get me wrong, I love League of Legends and I love that people are doing, DC Suicide Squad. I love that too, but I also like seeing some of our classic costumes, and like there's a couple of 1960s Batman and Batgirl running around and Robin, and you want to see a mixture and a bit of a difference in the costuming community, because at the moment there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, don't get me wrong, I love Deadpool, I love Suicide Squad Harley, that's amazing costumes, and some of my girlfriends do amazing jobs, but it's just like I really want to see some different things as well. Don't get me wrong, I still love their costumes and they hit them right on the mark because these girls work on them so hard. They build them from scratch. So they do such an incredible job. But it's also the variety I like to see at conventions as well. Stuff that will hit me with the nostalgia, something that would go, oh my God, I have not seen that in years. So that's what kind of also got me back onto the Buffy thing is I should watch Buffy because this girl has done the Buffy costume. I should really go back and start watching that and see if I can get back into it, see if I can start from the beginning and go from there. So that's where
Right.
that started.
Okay. Yeah, the one of my favorite one of my favorite cartoon shows on Disney a while back was Kim Possible. And I'm
Yes.
not sure if you've heard of it,
Yeah,
but
it's big
I
here in Australia too.
I've seen a resurgence of people doing Kim and Ron, and I really love getting to see that.
Yep. No, I've seen a couple of costumes of Ron and Kim around here in Australia as well. So it's fantastic to see those. I did grow up watching Kim Possible because we had Saturday morning Disney. So it was a Saturday morning. It just played Disney shows. So it had The Little Mermaid when it had a TV series. It had Lilo and
Hmm.
Stitch when it had the TV series. And it had Kim Possible and a couple other like the older cartoons from, older Mickey, older Minnie, older Daffy, some of the older cartoons. Daffy's Universal, but anyway, Donald, like older Donald and Goofy, some of the cartoons that we don't get to see these days and ages that were fantastic to watch at the time.
Yeah, I miss those days of classic cartoons. My kids right now, they watch Netflix a lot, so they're watching Pokemon, or they're watching the My Little Pony series, Friendship is Magic. But they don't really watch anything that's on the TV now. But I think it's just because there's not really like that really good
Mm,
classic cartoons for them anymore.
yeah. When I grew up, I was watching Looney Tunes, the classic Disney characters. So I used to love watching Looney Tunes and Disney. Um, but our current cartoons here in Australia that everyone's going crazy over with kids because I work in a children's hospital, is Peppa Pig, Dora the
Hmm.
Explorer. Frozen is still quite a big thing over here as well. And you don't know how many times I have to sing Let It Go at work. Um, what's another one? Paw Patrol, um, and Octonauts. So these are newer like puppies as puppies that can do everything. Like one puppy is a firefighter, one puppy is a police chief, another puppy is a nurse, another puppy is an explorer. So it's kind of cool, but it's also like I feel like kids aren't getting the same thing that that I had when I was a kid, because when I was watching those cartoons, my sense of humor is like, oh, that looked like it hurt, poor coyote, but it was also kind of like funny at the same time because the roadrunner always got away.
Right. My kids they've watched Paw Patrol and Peppa Pig and Octonauts. They've outgrown them for the most part now, but yeah, I really wish that my kids would get into the same stuff that I got into, like Looney Tunes, uh, but sad or Scooby Doo. But at this time, they're just not going for it, and I just want to be like, please like what I like.
Yeah. Yeah, Scooby Doo is still pretty good over here. We managed to get that on the telly in the morning sometimes. So that's a good start. But I do miss the older cartoons, and watching the telly these days. I'm like, Peppa Pig is on, change channel. Yep, that's on, change channel. I'm just gonna go put Netflix on. At least I can watch Pokemon on Netflix.
There you go.
Mm.
Now, is it the same with Supernatural as far as you getting into it? Just someone has said, "Hey, you should watch Supernatural," or did you stumble across it?
I've had a couple friends through the years mention to me, "Hey, you should watch Supernatural. Hey, you should watch Supernatural." So a costumer here named Baby Alice, she's also a really big Supernatural fan. She's been pushing me to watch Supernatural for quite a while. But also my friend who was an artist, who did the Final Fantasy drawings, she's pushed me towards Supernatural quite a bit. And I've got some United States friends who mention it occasionally. Hey, you should watch Supernatural. I just haven't done it yet because I know that there's a long-standing 5 or 6, 7 seasons now. I think.
I think they're going into 11 or 12 at this
Oh,
point.
okay, my bad. So I have watched. As I said, I'm still watching Buffy at the moment, so I'm up to episode 7 with Buffy. I'd managed to get myself through 4 or 5 episodes of Supernatural before I started Buffy, so I'm alternating between the two currently. But I'm enjoying how Supernatural started. That was quite a bit of an awkward start. It was like, your mum's burning on the roof at the moment. Wow, okay, that's weird. And then it starts with Sam and Dean, and we're seeing Sam with his girlfriend, and then he comes back into the house and it's doing the same thing that happened to his mum. And I was like, wow, okay, what is this demon and how are we going to beat it? Because this is pretty cool. So
Hmm.
I found the start was very interesting and intrigued me. And some of the monsters are folk stories and laws that I've heard of or read of on the internet. So they're bringing in classic stories that intrigue someone. So different types of monsters and fairy tales and myths that have been written about. So I'm enjoying how that's part of the story. I just haven't sat down and watched 26 episodes in 24 hours. That's the only thing I haven't done yet.
Did you get to watch it similar to Buffy, where you caught bits or pieces or episodes on the pay TV?
Um,
Or is this like you're like brand new, you're coming into it with just what people have told you about it?
I'm brand new with what people have told me. I've managed to avoid most supernatural spoilers except for the gifs that pop up on Tumblr and on Facebook. So I do understand little bits and pieces from the stories. Like I know Castiel's going to come in, and there's an entire story between Castiel, Sam, and Dean, which is going to be interesting. I know who Cass is. I know that there's a Lucifer as well. A girlfriend of mine absolutely loves Lucifer. So she's Lucifer this, Lucifer that. And I'm like, okay, okay. When I get there, calm, calm, Sherilyn, calm. So she's pushing for Lucifer, and then other friends are like, yeah, you're gonna love it. Wait until you get to this season. I'm like, okay, I'll get there before Halloween, maybe. We'll see.
There was I've not watched all of Supernatural, but there was a character that was brought in to the Supernatural universe that's played by one of my favorite people, Felicia Day.
Oh, yep, yep.
And so I watched all of her episodes, and that was it. And I've never gone back to start it because it is so many, like there's so many episodes, so many seasons, that if I do that, that's like the only thing I'm going to be watching, instead of kind of spreading it around and watching like 3 or 4 different TV shows.
Mm. Yeah, it's hard because of that. And there are so many great episodes out there, and there are so many great TV series out there that I feel like I'm never going to get them under wraps exactly for that reason. Because I know Felicia Day is also in Buffy. I've seen a little episode with her in it, so that's something that I've got to keep an eye out for. I know I've been noticing certain characters and different actors in TV series going, "Hey, you were in that TV series too. I liked you in that TV series, and you're portraying this character quite well too." So, yeah, I was lucky enough to experience Firefly before I've watched any of these things, so I do
Yay,
know.
Firefly!
Yeah, so I'm lucky I've experienced Firefly before I've watched many of these other TV series because I did find Firefly at university before I was watching sci-fi television. And watching Firefly, I was like, hey, this is really good. Started doing a Google search, looked for season two, and like many new people who've never seen Firefly, saw that there was no season two, and then had a cry, and then went and searching for other TV series to watch. So, and then I found Serenity, obviously, the movie, which wasn't too bad either, which put a bit of a bit of a finish for the entire TV series. But I still feel like I've been robbed of a awesome TV show. Thanks, Fox. But that was one of the things I noted. Firefly was really well done by Joss Whedon. So I was like, what else has been done by Joss? And went out and took a look around. But Buffy was something I knew I'd be coming back to watch anyway. But yeah, we'll see how I go with getting it all done. It's going to take a while because I know there's a lot of series and seasons to watch.
Yeah, and you'll be very happy, I think, as you go on and watch it, especially with all the twists and turns that Buffy has. And definitely agree with you on Firefly that we were robbed. And I always, when I find out that I have friends that maybe haven't watched Firefly, I'm like, okay, the DVD set's only $10. I'll go buy it for you. Please watch it.
Yeah, I got my sister to watch Firefly, and then she was like, "Is there a season two?" And I'm like, "No, there isn't. I'm sorry." And she's like, "Wow, okay. Thank you for breaking my heart." And I'm like, "Yeah." But some of the good things, one of the good things that's happening this year here in Brisbane is that we're actually getting Nathan Fillion to come to one of our actual big conventions of the year. So I'm holding out at the moment for a VIP ticket so I can actually meet Nathan Fillion in person without having to line up with everyone, for a couple hours to see this guy. So and Nathan Fillion is coming to Brisbane Supernova. So that's our big pop culture convention here in Brisbane, apart from Oz Comic Con. So very exciting news for me is that Nathan Fillion's coming. Yay!
Yay. Yeah, that's my wife's boyfriend.
Yeah, it's like everyone's boyfriend apart from John Barrowman. Yeah, we've had John Barrowman here too, and the line was pretty much as long as the Nathan Fillion line's going to be.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and the Stan Lee line outdone every single line that we've had in Supernova before. Holy mackerel, that line was ridiculous. I was so happy I got a VIP ticket that year.
Yeah.
It's
He
amazing.
was at our
Hmm?
yeah, he was at our local convention just recently over the summer, and he's wrapping up his conventions. He's not going to be doing anymore after New York Comic Con in October, I believe. That's
Yeah.
going to be his last one unless he makes, I guess, certain exceptions.
Yeah, I think he'll be making certain exceptions. It's Stan Lee. He loves what he does. He can't not say no.
Absolutely.
But yeah, his last convention in Australia was Sydney Supernova 2014 with John Barrowman. That was a really good convention year, that one. That was my first interstate convention. So I went down, I saw Stanley, John Barrowman, and went, can I afford this convention? Yes, I can afford this convention. Um, and I managed to get Stan Lee to autograph my Captain America shield done by the one of our shield makers here in Australia named Type 40. He does some um, very accurate Captain America shields, and he also does custom shields, which are really cool as well. So he's awesome. Shout out to him. He was amazing. He bought my shield up from Melbourne before he sent it to me from Melbourne to Queensland. He bought it up because he was getting a truck. He brought it up to Sydney. He gave it to me at the convention. I got it signed by Stanley. I took it back to him, and he shipped it. He took it back to Melbourne and shipped it up to me in Queensland. So shout out to him. He is incredible. So I was the only reason I got my shield signed was because of Alan from Type 40. So he was pretty wicked.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And see, that's something that maybe wouldn't have happened, but in like the fandom community, you have people that just will do so much for others.
Yeah, and that's what Alan's good for. He's absolutely incredible friend. He's an absolutely incredible fandom person. He loves comics. He loves Marvel. He's working on all sorts of different Marvel bits and pieces. So he's currently working on a Winter Soldier shield to match the Captain America shield. He's done a custom spider cap shield. He's done a custom mini shields for children. He does custom everything. He can do any kind of shield you want. He can do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So shout out to Alan from Type 40. Spectacular guy. Absolutely fantastic shields. And he's a great friend to have. So
Now, we were talking before we started recording about a book series that you are into called The Rangers Apprentice.
yes, so it's done by an Australian author named John Flanagan. So John Flanagan initially started this book series for his son, who he didn't like reading. So he started this book series for his son to read called The Rangers Apprentice, who follows a young gentleman at the age of 15 named Will. And it progresses through an entire life of Will and his friends, which is one of my all-time favorite series. I started reading it when I was probably 13 myself. So it was just at that stage where, do I like reading? Do I not like reading? And my librarian bought me this book and said, here, give this a go. And I started reading it and I fell in love with the story. I fell in love with this young kid who's small, doesn't fit the warrior who'll go to battle school kind of thing. He's good at climbing. He's good at using his wit and getting around little things like that. So he starts off as the underdog and becomes one of the kingdom's most known people and one of the most known heroes apart from his best friend Horace. So it follows through. I think it's about, be up to 12 books now for Will, and it's currently he's done another series called Brother Band, which is 6 books at the moment, who follows another character, and he's doing Rangers Apprentice the early years that follows Will's mentor Holt. So John is doing an amazing job with these books, and I keep reading them no matter how old I will get. They seem to they're still aimed towards that young adolescent preteen age group, but even an adult who reads these book series, it's just an incredible series. Every time I read the books, I find something new when I reread them every time, and I find that as the book series progresses, the character and the story kind of ages as well. So towards the end of the series, it gets a bit dark and some of the story gets a bit evil. Some of the characters become very complex. So it kind of ages with us as a reader as well. So as the child gets older, the books will get older for them. So it kind of progresses them into bigger books as they get older. So yeah, Ranger's Apprentice is probably one of my favorite things. Like even the proverb for it, they move silent as the shadow. They climb impossible heights. Their archery skills are unsurpassed. They are rangers. It's probably one of the big clickers for the story. Is it gets you enough that you're like, this is quite interesting. What's that about? It's really well done. I'd like to see it as a movie also. If like the first book is a movie or a TV series, it's quite interesting.
I'll have to take a look for it because I've never heard of it until now. But the author sounds, as far as like why he started that series for his son that wasn't interested in reading, there's an author here in America called Rick. His name is Rick Riordan. He does the Percy Jackson series.
Yep, love that.
And when you're telling me the story, he had said the same thing. He started making up a story for his kid who wasn't really getting interested in reading, and he started that story off about Percy Jackson, and it's blossomed into what it has become now.
No, I love that book series as well. It's one of my favorite book series, apart from The Rangers Apprentice. So I love reading about Percy Jackson and Annabeth, and I love reading about what the Greek gods are like in the real life at the moment. I'm currently I've finished reading the first one, the first series. I'm back to reading the second part of the series. So I'm up to the House of Neptune, I think it is. which
Okay, the son of Neptune
Son
or
of
House of.
Neptune, yeah, Son of
Okay,
Neptune. So I'm up to that one there. So it's a fantastic series. This will be the third or fourth time I've read it through.
I love Percy Jackson. Is one of my favorite book series currently.
And I love the fandom that's around these book series as well. I actually had a patient at the hospital reading. Who was reading? Which one was it? I think it was uh, Percy Jackson in the Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
So he was reading that book, and I just happened to be, his nurse that day. I was having a chat to him about the book, and I asked him if he knew anything about Rangers Apprentice, and his parents were like, "No, we've never introduced him to that one." He's like, "No, never seen it before." So I got them onto that one, and they looked it up, and by the end of the time they were in the hospital, they were like, "Yeah, I think we'll actually buy him that book to read." So it's amazing how you can. I relate to my patients, especially when they're reading. They love seeing these fantasy worlds and what the world can be like. So I managed to get this child and his family onto this next book series. So it will progress his reading. So he'll keep reading. And that's one of the good things about books is that it will just continue to read.
Absolutely. And there's so much. And once you find what you are looking for, what really grabs you in books, you find books that are similar or branching out from that. And there's just so much out there. There's always something out there for everyone.
And that's what I love about book fandoms because we'll just keep passing on. Oh, you've read that? That's cool. Have you read this yet? And I'll go, no, I haven't. And then I'll read the blurb and I'll go, yeah, okay, I like that. Thank you. I'll start reading that and then I'll start branching out and taking a look at what other things happen and other books will pop up. And I find that book fandoms are very good at relating other books to the book that you're reading. So it's one of the brighter things about books and the fandoms that are associated with books.
That is so true. I know I have a friend, and she's always spot on for recommending books to me. She's like, "You really need to read this book," and I'll put it off, or I won't. I'll be doing something else, and she'll be like, "Have you read it?" And then when I finally do get around to reading it, like the recent one that she suggested to me was done by an author named Kevin Hearn, and he writes a series called The Iron Druid Chronicles,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about this druid who has lived for 1,000, 2,000 years, and he is trying to just live his life, and the Irish gods are starting to come after him. One in particular, because he stole one of the swords from that the Irish god believed it was his, and
Mm-hmm.
the druid took it, and then he starts to incorporate like there's werewolves and vampires in it, but there's also the Greek gods and the Norse gods, and there's a trip to Asgard in one of the books,
Mm.
and there's just so much inclusion and references to like different pantheons and what he's doing and relating to elementals and the planet and what he's supposed to be doing as a druid, and it's just such a fascinating book. And that book series is one of like the ones that I'm currently just high on because of the author and just the story overall.
Yeah, and I love stories that will get me in within the first page. I like to be able to read a book and go, okay, is this book going to draw me in? And generally within the first page, okay, this is interesting. And by the end of the
Hmm.
chapter, you're pretty much drawn in. And then by the end of the day, you've read the entire book and started the second book.
Absolutely.
Don't know how many times I've done that now. And especially on my Kindle, I'll just be like, oh, that's pretty good. Downloads next book. Okay. And I'll finish reading that book by midnight that night. And I'm like, oh, I've got to start work in 5 hours.
Yeah,
Whoops.
that one click purchasing can be dangerous.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. I'm about to start reading the Game of Thrones series, and I've heard that that's a read and a half.
Oh, it definitely is. I have the actual books, so they're about the size of like we always say it's like size of telephone books,
Mm.
and it's just so much going on as opposed to what you see in the TV series, but it's just what they get to show you and present to you. It just makes it all the more worthwhile to read it.
Yeah, I've heard things like that about books, and you just go, yeah. Oh, so Game of Thrones is something that I've watched. I've watched the entire TV series, but the books will be something completely different. I've heard that there's bits and pieces that the series have left out, and I have seen that the series has diverged away from
Hmm.
the books, according to what I've read on Facebook and what I've read on forums and fandoms and what I've asked of other people. So they tell me that, yeah, it's diverged away quite a lot, but that's okay.
That's right. Now, you got into costuming or cosplay with Final Fantasy.
Yes.
And after that, like, did you just it just continued as something that you enjoyed and you wanted to keep doing it?
Yep, so that's how initially it started out. So when I initially started costuming, I was a big gaming costumer. So Final Fantasy was my big thing. And then when I think by the time I'd made my first costume, which was Yuna, I'd just finished making it, and a girlfriend helped me get some bits and pieces from eBay because I wasn't exactly the best sewer at the time. The Captain America, the First Avenger came out. So the USO Dancing Girls, if you remember watching Captain America before he became the hero and saved everyone from the 107th Infantry, he starts out as a show pony on stage trying to sell war bonds. And then there's
Hmm.
the dancing girls that are with him as well, dancing on stage to get everyone's attention. So I built my first costume as a USO dancing girl completely from scratch with some help from the USO dancing girls in the United States. So there's an entire group of them that normally march in the parade at DragonCon, I think it is. Is that the one?
Okay. Yep.
Yep. So they do the parade at DragonCon. So they're quite a big group now. There's about 100 and let me double check. I think it's like 150 of them that march. Um, I know that a girlfriend of mine from here in Australia has gone over and marched in the parade before. Um, I haven't been to DragonCon yet, but I would like to. The USO Dancing Girls here in Australia are growing. I think there's like 5 or 6 of us now. Narelle and I were two of the original girls to begin with many thanks to Kathy in the United States for going to the fabric shops and buying the exact fabrics the rest of the groups used in the United States and sending them all over to us here in Australia. So Kathy KD was amazing for that exact reason. But USO Dancing Girl was my first costume. And then once I started the movies, I moved back from the movies, from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was within 2011, 2012. I started reading comic books. So I'd progressed from gaming to movies back to comic books, and comic books took over. I mean, the movies are great, but I read the comic books and I went, there is so much more deep detail. There's much more depth in the characters. There's so much more involvement and backstabbing and spies and triple agents. And you just go, so whose side are you actually on at the moment?
Hmm.
So that's what I loved about comic books. And that's grown from Marvel. I've got DC comic books. I read one off comic books by other artists. I read some of the comic books by Australian authors that are just one offs. I've started going back and trying to collect some of the older issues. One of my favorite characters is American Dream, Shannon Carter from the MCT universe, which is one of my main costumes, the American Dream. So I've tried going back and finding the A-Next comics, which are quite hard to find. But I have one of her newer comics known as Beyond Courage. So I've read that one a couple times now, but I really want to go back and get the A-Next comics, which are really hard to find. They're not in production anymore. So they're kind of more of a collector's thing at the moment. So
Right.
I started reading comics. The New 52 stuff, which I've done a costume from New 52 myself. I did the New 52 Supergirl, which is probably one of my favorite Supergirls, to be honest. Is a very interesting character in herself. I know that there's many different stories around Supergirl, that there's different outfits, that there's different universes. I know Power Girl comes into play. There's all sorts of different interacting and different overarching themes and stories with Supergirl. So Supergirl was one of my favorite, especially in 52, and especially her costume in the New 52 Super Universe, which is absolutely on point. It's not a two-piece, which I love. I don't particularly like two pieces. I know many male fans would disagree with me, but I don't like two pieces. I love her one-piece swimsuit, which is kind of reminiscent of Wonder Woman.
Hmm.
So I love that entire suit, and it's the same with Power Girl, but only Power Girl has the boob window. I don't care about that. That's cool. She has a boob window. Whoop-de-doo. but she has an entire swimsuit instead of this two-piece crop top thing, which is what I love about Supergirl's 52 outfit. But I also enjoy the character. She doesn't know who she is. She's just woken up on planet Earth, and Kal-El's telling her, "Yeah, I'm Kal-El. I'm your cousin." And she's going, "What? Kal-El's a baby. Thank you. What?" So
Right.
it's a completely different spin on the story. So that's what I loved about the 52 universe. I mean, the stories are different, and the reboot is a good reboot. I enjoy the reboot, but I know there's DC fans out there who don't like the reboot, which is fine. Everyone likes their own things, and there's no way to push another person's fandom on another person. You just take up what you want and read what you want and enjoy what fandom you do enjoy. So that's what I find with the DC universe. There are different types of comics, and there's different reboots, and there's different starts. I believe there's another reboot that just got released recently, if I remember correctly, for the DC universe. But
Yeah, I think they rebooted it again.
yeah,
Because I don't really follow DC Comics. I grew up on Marvel,
yeah,
but I do know that they had this event again where they're like rebooting their comics across the board.
yep. DC Comics. It's DC Rebirth. There it is.
Gotcha. There you go. Yep.
I'm more of a Marvel fan myself, but I did enjoy the 52, so I might branch out to Rebirth and see if I like Rebirth as well. But I'm more of a Marvel fan myself as well. I loved the Civil War comics. Big fan of the Winter Soldier comic with Captain America and Winter Soldier. That's a really good comic. I actually borrowed that from my boyfriend and have read that a couple times. And I'm also reading X-Men vs. Marvel at the moment, which is pretty wicked. X-Men vs. Avengers, which is pretty interesting. And I think, where am I up to in that one? I'm up to, I think Rogue's currently taking Ms. Marvel's powers or something like that.
Okay.
So that's quite interesting, and it's a big comic because it's got the entire collection in this one book, and if I drop it on my face, it'll hurt.
Well,
So
don't lay down and fall asleep reading it with it above your face.
no, that's the underlying theme of that one. But it's a progression. That's what I've noted with my fandoms. I progress along the line from video gaming to movies to comics to books, back to TV series, and it just bounces back and forth. And I find that I dabble in all sorts of different fandoms across the pop culture board.
And it's always the best to do that because you're getting so much. There's so much stuff out there that if you just focused on one thing in particular, you'd be missing out on so much more.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. You can't stick with one thing. You've got to try different bits and pieces to know exactly what you like with a fandom.
So where can people find you if they want to follow you or check out your cosplays or just look at your pictures?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So on Facebook, if you just search Vicky, Vicky, hyphen VIC, it should come up as Vicky-Vic, and it has underneath, it should have Brisbane, Australia, and a public figure. And on Instagram and Twitter, it's the same one. It's _ Vicky-Vic as one word.
Okay, fantastic. And I know that you regularly post tons of great work, like especially a lot of your cosplays are super pretty, super beautiful. And the costumes are just gorgeous.
Thank you. I try to put a lot of work into them before I show them off at a convention or something like that. There's a lot to do and a lot of sewing.
I just want to thank you, Vicky, so much for taking the time out, especially on a Monday morning for you, and just getting to really just work out the time zone again and get to record this episode with me. It's been really a blast.
Thank you so much for organizing it as well, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Oh, you are quite welcome.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.